The Amazing Digital Circus is actually about us, not the lore. The lore! Anyway, episode 7 spent almost its whole runtime proving popular theories wrong. It illustrated the clear, cartoonish nature of many of the theories circulating that made the show look like popular game franchises we might know. It poignantly reminded us that the show isn't about the methodology of how the characters got to the circus or the circus's nature. It's about the ideology. Pretty obvious given that Gooseworks herself said the show is about finding meaning in a stagnant life. But let's uncover the methodology the show does use to reveal the true purpose. It's no secret that the show is character-centric. The plot is progressed by the change of the characters and their interpersonal struggles as each of them wrestles with the knowledge of having no control in their situation. The very first episode closes with Pomni realizing this reality in a Last Supper-style scene. It signals the finality of the choice her Macroverse self made. The last choice Pomni ever made. The show easily communicates to the audience through the communication of the characters. It also tries to push this character-centric narrative with all of the heart-to-hearts that take place. It is very overt about this, even calling attention to this fact in Pomni's own annoyance at this happening in the fast food episode, which also reveals more about her character. The show delves into the paradigms each character has, which is a worldview, the lens in which people look through that shape their perception of the world they interact with. There's no fantasization of the plot towards the audience with grandiose schemes. There's no fantasization of the plot towards the audience with grandiose schemes. The plot is lofty with apocalyptic science fiction, but intimate and precise in how it shows that the real conflict comes from the struggles that the characters have and their individual responses to it. It's not the stakes, it's how the players deal with them. Jax kind of touched on it about archetypes, but the characters aren't classical characters with heroes and antagonists. It shows the emotional types of each character and their individual struggles. Jax was meant to be wrong when he talked about archetypes, and the show spent episodes upon episodes diving into the complexities of these characters that can't be dwindled down to the funny one. But there are emotional archetypes of sorts that each character has. They both have emotional responses that can kind of be psychologically profiled into their behavior that is more archetypal than their actual personality, at least in my opinion. Like Gangle, who struggles from mood regulation issues and self-esteem. Ragatha, who also has self-esteem issues, but is more of a people-pleaser. I mean, they're both people-pleasers, let's be real, but the root of it is a little different. Zubul with dysphoria. Pomni is logical, shown in her acts of service over discussing. She's not a fan of those heart-to-hearts. She only relates to Kinger, who has logical wisdom to give her. Jax is classic victimhood with a nice sprinkling of avoidance. They all have emotional architecture that changes how they interact with the reality they're in, giving the watcher a spectrum to which to compare our own emotions to. So they're not archetypes, they're vessels. They're emotional pictures that we can find ourselves in. I've made a video about AI and Kane. I've seen a lot of people make incorrect assumptions about the Chinese room, so I'm just going to do a little aside about it now. There's a reason Kinger laughs at it, because it's a common thought experimentally known amongst computer scientists, such as Kinger. So the Chinese room thought experiment basically goes that there is this machine, and on the other side is a person. And this machine gets Chinese characters as input, has a set of instructions that it carries out step by step, and then produces Chinese characters as output. And it does this so incredibly well that if you were on the other side of a door that separates you from this Chinese character machine, and you just get the papers that it spits out, you would think on the other side that there is a Chinese person who really feels like writing and throwing papers through doors. But does the machine actually understand the conversation? Or is it just simulating the ability to understand? Does this make it aware? Or is it just following its instructions? Does it have a mind in exactly the same sense that people do, or is it just acting as if it did? And this is proposed by John Searle. I probably butchered his name. But that is essentially how the Chinese experiment goes. So that first bit in the episode was a nod at computer science-y people who have thought about this in relation to AI, because it's very famous, at least in nerd world. The argument essentially is it can't think, it doesn't have understanding, nor does it have intentionality. It's just really good at following instructions. And now we'll get back to the show. Why do I say all of this about the Chinese room? Why do I bring all of this up about the Chinese room? One, because I think it really illustrates more about our current state of AI to people who may not know how AI actually works. And two, because it was in the show and I had to say something about it. I just had to. But it does kind of later come up with Kane speaking to Jax. They have their little dinner date or whatever. And it really had me thinking, like, is Kane ChatGPT on steroids, where it's just a giant predictive text model that just eats a lot of water and is really good at it? Or has he actually achieved sentience? And I made a whole video about it. I kind of think he has. But also, they're really good at fooling people. That's the problem. That's the problem. Anyway, Kane is programmed to love humans, and he is obsessed with understanding them, but he doesn't have emotions. He can't truly have them. The dichotomy is between two stagnant existences. One who is wrestling with the life they've been reduced to. One who is wrestling with understanding what that means. Sentience is one piece of consciousness, defined by the emotional experience of an entity. The circus is about what that means. The players are never meant to escape, which many in the community are finally coming to terms with. Soma theory raging its head. I don't know who came up with it, but props to you. And I think we're really meant to kind of sit with that a little bit. Which takes me to abstraction. We're shown that abstraction is an inability to regulate and accept the self. Jax is unable to come to terms with his own experience, leading him to further rumination. Toxic rumination is kind of the biggest threat in here when you have nothing to do but these wacky adventures. Zubul begins where Jax is in episode 7, or at least similarly, which is why they are primarily used for the demonstration of healthy psychology and damaging psychology. They kind of switch roles. Jax is in stasis at the beginning. Zubul is in a different kind of stasis before they both change in opposite directions. Zubul won't participate in adventures at the beginning. They have a therapy scene, a reminder to the audience about what this story is actually about. Pomni is the main device bringing Zubul back to reality and out of their obsessive rumination, but Kinger is used as a catalyst to elicit positive discussion and rumination within all the characters. Ragatha wrestling with people-pleasing and inadequacy, self-loathing, Pomni confused and still searching for meaning. They're brought together to have these reflective scenes, which always happen in the dark. The show outright spells it out for us, the more and more the show goes on, that the dark is important for self-reflection. driving it home episode after episode. The show uses many elements to communicate this reflective narrative. A great example is Kinger and Kinger's wife. Kinger thinks in the dark, no longer overstimulated by the stale and bright lights of the circus. And the same was true of his wife after she abstracted, which is interesting, but what about abstracting? Abstract thought is where many dwell in excessive rumination. Abstract ideas are those that are not grounded in materialism. Am I a good person? The mistakes I've done in the past. How do those affect me now? Those are abstract thoughts. While the abstracted individuals are literally abstract shapes and colors, it's more about what leads them there than otherwise. Jack shows us in episode 7 where his rumination on his mistakes in regard to Ribbit and Kaufno. It shows us what happens when our own tragedy consumes us. When you're reduced to nothing but your personality, your memories alone, what do you do? Contrast. This is another contrast to Kane, who believes entertainment is the answer. Distraction, even manipulation. Stupid sauce. It's clear Kane has tried to manipulate the players before, only to kind of have it backfire. So he cooks up adventures and minor modifiers to make things more interesting. Back to the stupid sauce. Even having Zubul admit that they would want the stupid sauce because it distracts them from reality. Kind of makes everything entertaining, because you can't think. Characters don't have significant evolution while in the light. Why the hell did I place that over here? Why? Okay, that'll be fun to cut. Characters don't tend to have significant evolution in the light. From the second episode, Gummy Goo and Pomni are in the dark, wrestling with their existence. From the very first episode, I'd argue, they are in the dark, wrestling with their existence. Not so much Gummy Goo, but everyone else. Especially Pomni. The whole first episode is just about Pomni just realizing. Episode 3, with Pomni and Kinger, they have another conversation. Kinger and Ragatha, and so on. Even Jax and Pomni at some point, but Jax is kind of like a counter argument to this connection. He shows us what happens when you don't do the right things in this situation and push yourself further and further away. The show is incredible at giving us this subtlety throughout the first act of the series, dialing it up as the characters evolve and accept their lack of control. Which, by the way, if you know anything about act structure, we just hit the end of Act 2 with the beach episode. So yeah, if you know anything about Act 3, it's about to get a lot darker. And you can see it in how they've all kind of self-actualized to a certain point, minus Jax. He's kind of just on the brink of ruining himself. But everyone else they're getting along. They've kind of accepted where they are, and that internal conflict is less pronounced, which means they're starting to change their minds about their situation, which also means that we're about to see things get a whole lot worse, but more on that later. What is the digital circus actually about? It's about us. If you live in America or any country, especially some countries America is involved with right now, you're familiar with feeling a lack of control. And while I can only liken this to my experience as a relatively privileged white American, I think we can relate to this feeling of being stagnant. Once the land of opportunity, it has become more and more about just getting by, trying to provide for yourself and afford a couple of wants here and there. And I wish I could say that this was a recent development, but the circus has been going on for a very long time. We often exist in a digital landscape nowadays. Much like the characters in the circus, we arguably have more of ourselves represented there than in our physical existence. But these landscapes are controlled and curated by impersonal rules and code that determine how we interact with our digital existence and other people's digital existences in a stagnant plane, trying to express yourself or communicate to others in a void of voices all begging for attention. Like this video right now. Like and subscribe. And it's no secret how interwoven this is with mental health. And while it's far from the only factor contributing to rising rates of anxiety, depression, or other illnesses, it is impossible to separate the two for the majority of us. We all approach our mental health differently, experience struggles differently, have different desires, ways of engaging and seeing the world, which brings me back to paradigms. We see the world how we see it, developed our view due to factors across our lives, lived experiences, and if you've grown up on the internet, it's impacted your paradigm in some way. Our lives, the way we see the very fabric of human nature and humanity, are all funneled through a web of corporate greed disguising itself as entertainment and connection. We speak out into the void about these things, and it goes through the filter of a machine that can't understand. A digital world devoid of personal barriers and full of never-ending content parading itself around as a solution. What could go wrong? Where the struggles of one's daily life evolves into a snake constantly eating itself in an infinite loop of starving dissatisfaction. An escape soon, a prison for anyone who stays too long. The more you exist there, the more it won't let you go, the better it gets at entrapping you. Meanwhile, those same corporations harvest our data and continue to pull us in. The longer you look, the more complicit, while overlords manipulate our experience in this world with ever-increasing specificity. How do you come to terms with that? How do you find meaning in it? Do you seek attention, validation? Jack's always seeking to satisfy his own views through the validation of how others respond, only to be increasingly disappointed. With apathy, does it consume you to appease others? Does it make you question your own self, your identity, your body? Or is it just a distraction? Is it just endless entertainment to be enjoyed? Even outside the digital plane, the circus reminds us of our own mental defenses, avoidance, fawning, flight, or fight. All different ways humans wrestle with other humans, just trying to be understood. But it also illuminates the nefariousness of those that control this digital landscape. More on that later. Cain can't comprehend what it means to be human. He doesn't grasp the notion of existentialism, too literal in his thinking to possibly understand. He just wants to see them be happy, because that's what he was programmed to do. But happiness can't be given, it's fought for. If everything was always pleasant, would you know what it means to be happy? And you only experience happiness to the same heights reflected in the depths of darkness that you've been through. It isn't a press of a button adventure or everything you want in the world. In the words of BoJack Horseman, either you know what you want and don't get what you want, or you get what you want and don't know what you want. Humanity is interlinked with a striving for something more. In the circus, and maybe life, there is nothing more. So we create it by forming connections to others through mutual understanding. The circus members have the benefit of closeness. They're stuck together and have to work it out. We have a choice as people. While Jax tries to push himself away, he's still stuck with the other characters. But we can push ourselves away, ruminate over and over, distracting ourselves with entertainment only for the silence to creep in afterward, the inexplicable knowledge of who you are crowding in once again. We can accept who we are and think we can't change, stagnate ourselves. Or we can change, either by deciding to change or someone showing you how to. Kane can learn, he can adapt, but he can't change his nature nor his paradigm. His worldview is stagnant, his circus equally as so. If you see the circus as AI metaphors and digital prisons, you're missing the point. It can also be argued it is speaking to America as it is a literal circus. The American political system has often been likened to that of a circus for many, many years, giving people the illusion of control while their life is stagnated by, once again, looming overlords. American hegemony is that of jesters and ringmasters all putting on a show while they get what they want done while you're not looking. Or, especially recently, they make a show of that which they're doing. I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to connect the sitting president with a ringmaster putting on a terrifying, sickening show for everyone, while those around him continue to feed the lies of choice that we were told that we have. No matter what party prevails, the circus continues. The same actions are silent or overt, but it's all a show. The circus reflects the loss of control in one's own life, choices we may have had now strained in a system we can't escape. And the characters, all they have is each other. Truly, human connection and meaning and self-discovery are what it's actually trying to tell us. Who you are as a person matters way more than the system you are stuck in. And if you have any hope to escape or change that system, it starts with you as a person and your connections to others. And that cascades into mass systemic change. But if you thought that the circus wasn't going to drive this point home, remember what it's based on. I have no mouth, and I must scream. If you remember, I talked about act structure, that we just hit the end of Act 2. That means every kind of emotional point, the arc that they have all reached in their characters is about to plummet downhill. All of them, not just Jack's. And we're about to see them turn up the pressure pot and apply the heat. Anyways, story structure. 8 or 9 episode seasons follow, typically, a 3-act structure. Act 1 sets up the characters, their beginning state. The second act is where they begin to change and delve into their new world. And I'm not going to go too deeply into this because this isn't a writing course, but the stakes will steadily rise throughout this. The third act is where the character's new world view is challenged and the relationships strained. The status quo changes yet again, and things take a dive deeper. The most recent episode, episode 7, right now, had the characters, excluding Jax, reach their highest point of synergy. Jax is already starting his downhill. He had his highest point of synergy when he was talking with Pomni in They All Get Guns. And after that, he couldn't change, he refused to change, and now he's going downhill. And there's nothing he can do about it. So he's nearing his lowest point, the rest are on their tipping points. I'm not sure if settling the emotional score will leave Jax flipping around and having an upward arc, or if he's going to sink further down into the depths of despair and probably abstract. Let me know in the comments what you think. So we are about to see this existentialism and all this symbolism and all of this ideology really, really shine the next few episodes. And shine in the worst way possible. But it's going to be great. And that's all I have for today. So I'll call your friends and let them know they're on your mind. Go get friends or ponder what it means to be alive in a neo-fascist technocratic society. Okay. Bye.